I was filled with two very strong, polarizing feelings. One of, oh my God, this work is amazing. And secondly, I'm never going to achieve this. I think you're born with it.
Yeah.
And I think in the same way that you can sing, I think you've got that eye or you haven't got that eye. I am never going to earn that level of money. I will have to be here for years and years and years and years.
Welcome back to another HdE podcast. Our guest today is Spencer McPherson, founder of Still Moving. How are you doing, Spencer?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me along for this.
Well, thanks for having us.
That's great.
We're in Cheltenham today.
Yeah, this is our first sort of, I suppose, podcast, although we're only 2 episodes in on the road. So we're obviously at the Still Moving offices in Cheltenham, and we've obviously had the tour. Got very jealous of the space. Beautiful, beautiful warehouse here in Cheltenham. So, Spencer, we're just going to talk a little bit about yourself first of all, if that's okay. So if you could just introduce yourself to our 3 listeners, that would be great.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, hi, I'm Spencer. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at Still Moving, and I never know where to go with this one because my job used to be a photographer, and as the business has grown, I'm now running the agency.
Yeah.
So I get involved in all sorts of things, from the little things to the big things. I try and focus on new business and make sure clients are happy, but I still do get rolled out every so often to go and shoot something, whether it's big or small. But my background is not in creative at all. I ended up doing this. You know when they say the universe conspires in your favor?
Yeah.
That's very much how I feel this has kind of gone.
Really?
So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a photographer for National Geographic,
Yeah.
but I had no idea how to become a photographer. My mum was, be a doctor or a lawyer, and that was very much advocated by my father, who was like, be a doctor, be a lawyer. And I remember going to Carmarthen, which is where my mum was from, to the markets, and they used to sell National Geographics for 20p, and my mum used to give me £1, and I'd go off and buy 5 National Geographics, and all holiday I would just go through these, and I was like, great, I'd love to do this, but I had no idea. And then I came top of my year in biology. I was like, cool, I'm going to go be a cardiologist or something. Yeah. And then my work experience came around, and I ended up at the Crown Prosecution Service in Gloucester, and I loved it. I was sat with the barristers, I was hearing all about the cases. I was like, this is it, I want to be a lawyer. So then I went and got my law degree. I ended up working in the city doing really specialist insurance, where you were basically insuring legal cases against losing in court.
Oh, wow.
And it was incredible. Yeah. And I hated being in London. And then a job came up with St James's Place, and I moved from London to my family home in Cheltenham and worked in Cirencester for St James's Place. And again, I was doing all sorts of random, like technical jobs, analysing trusts, helping advisors to understand complicated scenarios. But a lot of my job was actually helping people with technical challenges so that they understood them, so that they could become an everyday part of their lives or whatever. And while I was there, I set up a nightlife guide in Cheltenham called Nocturnal Cheltenham. And we basically would go out to the nightclubs, have a free night out, photograph all the pretty people, stamp them with a logo, and stick them on Facebook the next day. But all the clubs loved it because we were building a profile and talking to people, and everyone used to love sharing the photographs. And then we basically built this website, and all the clubs were uploading their flyers and stuff. And people said, oh, your photo's quite good. I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. But it just grew and grew. And then someone said, oh, can you photograph my wedding? Or can you do this? And suddenly I was like, oh, I quite like photography. I didn't really know how to make it commercial or whatever. I was just enjoying it. But I had my corporate job, which I thought was my future and my career and all that sort of stuff. And I think the turning point was a friend of mine who was a makeup artist. She was working with a stylist. He was a big-time stylist, but he had some challenges, and he was actually in LA, and he had some addictions, and he moved back to the UK to live with his mum at like 38 to try and clean himself up and sort himself out. And he started doing local fashion shoots, and my friend was a makeup artist. She knew at this point I was desperate to be a photographer and loved fashion photography. And she said to him, can Spencer just come along and shoot behind the scenes? And he was like, yeah, cool. So I was like, wow, great. This is it. Off I go. And I met him, and he instantly helped and supported me. Yeah. He kind of explained what he was doing and why he was doing this and why you had this team and what his process was. And on the day of the shoot, he said, look, don't just shoot behind the scenes. I'm going to give you some time with the model. Amazing. And you know what it's like on a shoot. The pressure's on. There's never enough time. Everything's running over. So for him to say, I'm going to give you 5 minutes at the end of each shot when, you just grab the model, get her dressed for the next shot or whatever. And at the end of the day, he looked at my shots and he said, your photos are better than the professional photographer I brought in. And I was like, what? This is ridiculous. And I had no belief in myself, or I had no technical knowledge or ability at that point. And he said, your photos are better, and these are the reasons why. And then we kind of went on a bit of a journey with him after that, where he kind of took me under his wing, and I guess he saw some potential. Yeah. But this guy was a big-time stylist. He'd worked on major campaigns, had celebrity friends, had worked all over the world. He was the first person who I guess I respected the opinion of. So when people say, when your mum and dad say, oh yeah, your photos are great, I'm like, you don't know.
Of course you're going to say
you don't know. So to have somebody who was in the field and made a successful living from it, saying you're doing good work here, I want to be involved and let's do some stuff together. I was like, okay.
That's a really cool story.
How many months were you, or years were you into like shooting photography before that day?
I don't know, a year, something like that. But then he said to me, I'm shooting for a magazine in January and I want you to shoot it. And I was like, what? I don't know what I'm doing. Wow. And by then I had another photographer who was working with me, Phil, and he was a much more technical photographer. So we like, great, we will do this. And we were all set to go, 6th of January. I was working at St. James's Place at that point. And I got a phone call from my mum's friend saying, have you heard the news about Stuart? And I was like, what? And he committed suicide on the 28th of December. And it was just harrowing. It was just like so bad. And I didn't believe it. Left work, who let me go on compassionate leave, however long I was off for. And went to all my friends, and everybody was just, couldn't believe it. And the magazine rang me a couple of days later and said, look, we want to run a tribute to him in the magazine. Mm-hmm. We've got these fashion pages. What do you want to do about the fashion pages? And I was like, I want to shoot it. Yeah. So we shot it. I had some help from a stylist that just helped us with all the things that he would have done. And we kind of just shot it in honor and in tribute to him. The magazine loved it so much, they gave us a front cover. Wow. And then they said, do you want the pages every month going forwards? So that was kind of the start for me then. I had a reason to shoot, and I had such a traumatic kick that it was like, you know what, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. Yeah. If I do this now and it fails, I can go back to my corporate job and work for anybody. Yep. But actually, I've got an opportunity to go and do something now. So I did. And I'd keep just the final bit on him, because I appreciate we can talk about that all day. He was obsessed with Vivienne Westwood, worked with Vivienne Westwood, always wore Vivienne Westwood. And I think it was about 4 years later, I actually shot a portrait with Vivienne Westwood. And I remember being in front of her going, the only reason I'm here is because one person believed in me.
That's so cool. And
gave me some hope and confidence. Yeah. And without that one person, I wouldn't have done anything.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's a incredible story.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting when people like are reading stories, isn't it? And sort of stimulus behind it. But that's really awesome. And in terms of like, what I was picking out from some of that aside from the story was you've kind of like not fallen into it. You found your way into it. But where do that sort of technical ability come from? Like, obviously, you've got an eye for it, but where did you learn those technical skills to be able to go onto a shoot with a fairly established fashion photographer, pick up a lens and start shooting, and for them to say, these are really, really good? Where did you get that ability from?
I'm sure people will criticize me for saying this, but you know why? Let's just go for it anyway. I think you're born with it. Yeah. And I think in the same way that you can sing, I think you've got that eye or you haven't got that eye. Yeah. And yes, you can be trained to sing in the same way that you can learn techniques around photography, but I think you've either got it or you haven't. And then alongside that, we spent a lot of time learning. I remember we would take any job going in the early stages. We were doing chiropractic dog photography, jewelry photography, fashion, you name it, we would take it. And we were constantly having new jobs come our way. And we're like, we don't know what are we doing? Yeah. We don't even know what we're doing with this. And we were buying specialist bellows from China to do jewelry photography so that we could do the stacking and the movement. And we were just learning and researching and failing and developing, and we were all completely self-taught. Really? So in those early days, it was, what do we have to do to make this work? Yeah. let's go and do it. And we made it work. And it just grew and grew and grew. And our technical abilities improved constantly, just from various online resources and also from testing and shooting. And we shot constantly. Yeah. We would shoot anything. But we loved it. And it was cool and it was great. And imagine I had this really boring corporate job that I actually hated. To be shooting at weekends or to have days off, to shoot in evenings or whatever. And knowing that we had the magazine that we had an outlet for forced us to shoot continually. And then we became known as the people to do this stuff. And I was like the fashion photographer of the town at the time. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've always been quite good at chatting to people, so they got excited.
So how long were you sort of in the corporate job for, alongside like shooting on the weekends and evenings and things like that? When was it you decided to pull the plug in?
It was a while. It was longer than it should have been. Yeah, definitely. I can't remember. I would say 6 years doing it on and off. I remember having 3 full-time staff while I was still working in finance.
No way.
And I remember I would take every spare evening, weekend, holiday day for photography. Yep. But we'd never spend any of the money. So whenever we were earning money, we just saved it. Yep. And I just lived off the finance money. Eventually, I was able to switch it. So I consulted for 2 or 3 days a week on finance, and then the other days were photography. And I was able to survive off the photography money and save the financial services stuff. And that's when I knew that I would be okay. Yeah. But then I just didn't want to put any pressure on the business. So I didn't take any more money than I absolutely needed to, because I wanted to be able to buy new equipment or to have a punt on something or to have an element of safety. But what I would say is the second I quit, I had so much more success within the business because I was dedicated and focused on it. Yeah. The challenge that I had was that by having my left brain and my right brain continually fighting with one another, because I was having to do technical, boring reports in the day, and then next day or in the evening I was doing something creative. It frustrated me. But as soon as I said I don't have to worry about that now, everything just opened up.
But it's like a huge sense of relief as well.
But it's hard, because had I not done it that way, the business may not have survived, or we wouldn't have had as much kit, or we wouldn't have been able to say yes to as many things. So because we had that staggered entrance, it took the risk out. Whereas if we'd have gone all in from the get-go, there's probably quite a high chance that it may not have succeeded.
So when you say we, as in like all the way back then, are we talking about we as in this company, as in Still Moving, or was there...
So we originally were all in the image, and then it sounded like doing too many weddings and kids' portraits and stuff that we didn't want to be associated with, because we did do everything. And I remember there was one agency that said, well, we didn't work with you back then because we had weddings on the website and stuff like that. So then we went to McPherson Stevens, which was Phil Stevens and Spencer McPherson. But we sounded like a law firm or an accountancy practice. And then Dale joined us. So then when Dale joined us, I was like, well, Dale's an owner and partner of the business, so we can't just not have his name on it. But then we were working with a guy, we were sharing his office space actually, and he just came up with Still Moving, and we're like, well, that's perfect. He's done the logo for us. This is great. Off we went, and that was it. No time at all. It was a period of changes and developments that got us to a point where we said, well, no, commercial advertising is where we want to be. I always wanted to shoot for Vogue Italia, and I still haven't achieved that level of success. But one day, we might get a chance to do that.
Oh, good. Do you think it's really interesting you talking about Still Moving itself focusing on certain aspects or certain themes and subjects or verticals, as it were? Do you think, and obviously doing less weddings and portraits and all that kind of stuff, do you think that's a really important element in terms of growing an agency like this, in terms of having that specialist, not necessarily a niche, but a focus in terms of a product or a vertical? Or
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because we do cover a few sectors. So we'll do automotive, food and beverage, fashion, corporate comms. So we do move around a little bit more. What we specialise in is saying, well, we want to understand you and your brand, and then we can produce the content that supports you. If we only did automotive or we only did corporate comms, the narrow position we would probably find ourselves in is that we wouldn't have as much variety to our days. You would still, but maybe not. But I know that if we were just doing the corporate work day in, day out, I wouldn't have any staff because they don't want to do that all the time. It's fine as a balance, and we're quite fortunate that the corporate work that we get, we push to make it more engaging.
I was going to ask that, because I think obviously from the portfolio I've seen, it's especially with the larger corporate brands. There's a lot of different approaches to creative, and the stuff we've seen is very imaginative and it's very different. Do you get your wings kind of clipped somewhat? Not necessarily by your clients, I'm not going to sort of throw you under the bus, but is it sometimes harder to work with those larger brands in terms of that sort of creativity and the input that you have?
Yeah, it can be, but you've got to be bold and you've got to push. And Dale, he's great at it. He's like, you should just do this, and he'll pitch an idea. And I think once you've worked with somebody, or it's interesting, when you bring somebody in for the first time, they'll listen to you more. And I find that quite often I'm in a situation where an employer has their staff members around the table and they've been telling this client to do these things for years. But I come in and I sit in front of people and they just want to do it. And I don't know whether it's because of what we do and they just see us as an expert. But it is interesting that I've seen a number of employers across different sectors, different sizes, that they just don't seem to listen or to trust their team sometimes. And I don't know what that is or why that is. But I know that when I worked in corporate, my opinion may or may not have been that respected, but they would never really go hard on something. Whereas now I can come into the same organisation and get them to spend X amount of cash or go crazy down a particular route that maybe they could have had internally, but they've never had the confidence to go with it or not. But I think maybe because we deliver this stuff day in, day out for people, they just go, we've got to listen to you because you clearly know what you're talking about. I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is to that one.
And what do you prefer doing yourself personally? Is it the larger corporate gigs, or is it sort of the sort of smaller projects where you've got complete sort of free dominion?
I can't answer that.
No.
Because
we do so many.
It's so varied as well, aren't they?
It is so varied. So I like working with new clients and new brands because you can shape it. But then equally, when you look at the creative and the level of stuff that you can produce with the brands that have got the appetite for it, it's incredible. When I remember shooting the world #1 snowboarder, and I was sat on the side of the mountain, and he was coming down doing his trick in front of me and getting skidooed back up to the top. So there was no recycle time. It was really fast. And I was like, this is so cool. Why am I? I don't deserve to be here doing this. And it was in the lead up to the Winter Olympics. I was like, I'm here doing these shots for this guy. I just don't get those opportunities. So if it had been a much bigger organisation that we were shooting for, they probably wouldn't have chosen us because they might have gone for like a guy that just shoots winter sports photography and filmmaking. 100%. They wouldn't have gone for us. But because we'd been with that client early doors and we'd grown with them, well, okay, we probably weren't getting paid as much as we should have been. Equally, they were getting a lot from us because we committed and done various things. And we kind of find that we edge with certain clients where we're a bit bigger than them, and then they're a bit bigger than us, but we kind of grow together, and you just grow at different levels. So once you've built that level of trust and rapport and relationship, and that's what it's all about, everything we've got is through people that we kind of work with, that we like and we trust.
We sort of found a similar sort of ourselves in that situation where we're growing with clients. We've had scenarios where there's been a company with 5-6 staff, for example, and we've worked with them for the last 2 years, and it's almost like every time we employ someone new, they employ someone new, and it's really nice to like grow together like that.
We've also had some really interesting conversations with people who had skin in the game for a lot longer than us in agency land and have gone to work for some of our larger corporate sort of clients that we work with in tech, and they've taken the time to be like, this is some feedback in terms of how you can build the business. So I think we've had a couple of times where it's like, okay, boys, it's great that we're working with you and 4 others, but you would ideally need another account manager or project manager, or you need an animator or a designer to come in now, because over the next 4 months we've got X going on. We want you guys to be working on those projects. That's invaluable. And I think that you're right in terms of like, it is a relationship thing, and it's getting on the ground with people. I think when we sort of started the agency, we felt we had to like puff our chests out and like come to the table and really sort of not exaggerate, but really sell ourselves into it. But actually, what we found is when we're not vulnerable, but when we're kind of like open, we've got a real aspiration. We know what we're talking about, and we've done some great things. But when there's that open dialogue, it makes it so much easier.
Every time. That authentic, genuine relationship building is what it's all about. Because I've been there, I've puffed my chest out and said I've done this and I've done that, and maybe it's not quite as clear as maybe it should have been. But once you've kind of proven yourself and validated yourself by doing whatever you've done.
Yeah.
You can just be yourself. And I've struggled with that over the years. You know, I've always doubted my self-worth, and I think I still probably suffer a fair amount of imposter syndrome, thinking there are other people that should be doing this and could be doing this maybe better than I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, here we are still doing it. So it all comes down to those relationships and having somebody that can say to you, make these adjustments, or, you know, maybe think about this. For somebody that is not jealous of you and just wants to see you grow and succeed is the most valuable relationship you can have with somebody, because I'm sure we've all been in that position where we think we've got people around us that are on our side, but actually they do want to see us fail.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
You know?
Bastards.
You bastards.
So yeah, here we are. Like, I guess 10 years later, as you mentioned earlier. Have you run a business before? Is this the first time you've run a business?
Yeah. My background was take the corporate ladder and
you went
grow.
straight to this.
I remember being at SJP looking at somebody thinking, oh, I wonder how much they earn. And I must have said it out loud because someone said, they earn about this amount of money. And I was like, what?
Crap.
And I sat there on my salary going, I'm never going to make it.
Yeah.
I am never going to earn that level of money. I will have to be here for years and years and years and years. And I still probably won't earn that money.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do it. And it was shortly after that things started to change. And I was like, got to find another way to earn cash, because that's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got a real love for what you do, and it comes across. You know, we've met a couple of times now. It comes across in everything. The way you talk about the work. I've seen that. We've met twice. I've seen that deck that you showed us 5 times.
I'm really well rehearsed.
Honestly, I absolutely love it because I think quite similar in a lot of ways. Very proud about what you've done and what your team do. What was the real kind of the stimulus behind it? Well, you mentioned obviously thinking about what other people earn and money and capital and stuff, but then you've got this real love for what you do. What was the key driver? What was the thing that was getting you out of the bed in the morning?
It's not work.
Yeah.
It's not work. What we do does not feel like work. You know, even the last 4 days, you know, carrying kit around Spain, shooting for a fashion brand, felt like a holiday. All right. I've got to do some stuff. Yeah. Mostly lying down on the floor in really awkward angles. But it doesn't. It's never felt like work. And you know, Dale and I have been very clear that we want to have cool creative projects. Yeah. I remember when we were doing our early day brand stuff, the agency said, "What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be doing?" And we said a load of stuff, and they basically summarized it at the end, and they said, so you basically want to be shooting for Rolex with a super yacht at the top of a mountain because you want to work with luxury brands in cool places doing cool things in ridiculous ways. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I do.
That is.
Love
it. Yeah.
And it kind of all stemmed from there. So we have the corporate stuff and we have the communication bits, and we're happy to do those because we try and make them interesting and engaging. And we've done a really large learning and development project for a finance company, but it was so cool. And our clients, and our team loved it because it was so different and so engaging. But our clients were happy to take a gamble on something, and it was big, and it completely changed the landscape. So as long as we're doing things that are engaging and interesting and truly creative, doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what the sector it is, doesn't matter what the budget is, as long as there's a chance for us to really push it and get the most out of it, even if it's just lighting it in a particularly clever way, you know, that is enough, because the technical is so important to us. And Dale on the film side is ridiculous. You know, the stuff that he comes up with, the ideas that he has, the ways that he approaches things, most people would not bother. And Dale pushes hard, especially with clients, to say, we could do it that way. It's going to be crap. We could do it this way, and it's going to be great. And it takes a lot of confidence sometimes. So I've turned a couple of clients down a couple of times, and they come back suddenly with more budget and an appetite for doing stuff. I remember I think I'd had a conversation with somebody and said, just be bold. And it was for a company.
We're about to get that.
Blasted on our wall.
Oh yeah, be bold.
Yeah. Hope we spell it right. Not with an A.
But this client contacted us out of the blue, wrote the brief, and we looked at it, that's like a 2 or 3 day shoot. It's going to cost X amount of money. We're on our way to the meeting a few days later. On the way to the meeting, we get an email saying, budget's really tight on this one. We're only going to be able to do this in 1 day. And I'm like, I'm halfway to the meeting, which is 3 hours away. This is now not going to go very well. Anyway, got in. I explained what we do, why we do it. totally sold the dream to them. And I said, how much did you pay for this last year? And they said £10,000. And I said, how much have you got to play with this year? And they said, I can probably squeeze it to £12,000. I said, it's impossible. What you're asking for is, there's no way we can do it. The reason that we can make this work and the reason that we'll be successful for you is because you've got to do all these things in this way, and we'll do this, 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 and this for you, and it'll be amazing. She went off and came back and said, how much do we need? And I said, £42,000. She said, I've got the money.
Wow.
Because she felt so confident that we would deliver for her. And she knew that she had to deliver something very specific for quite a large organisation. And I think she'd met with other people, but I don't think she had the confidence that they would deliver for her. And I went in there and said, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what the outcome will be. And she went and got the money. And I was like, normally I might have just gone, I'll take the 15 grand or whatever and take it and do it, and we'll just commit to it. And I think that was always our problem in the early days. We were so keen to do the job, excited by the project, and wanted just to keep the money coming in, that we would just kind of almost underwrite it and say, okay, this is a 20 grand job, they've only got 15, we'll just take the 15. Whereas now it's like, it's a 20 grand job and this is why you need to spend the extra money. My team are much stronger than me. You know, they will say, this is the price.
It doesn't work.
And I'm like, oh, well, let's just do it for this. And they're like,
no. Get off the phone.
you can sell the dream, but let us price it up.
It takes some balls, mine, to walk away, especially in the early days, because we've done exactly the same stuff, by the way. You know, we were taking jobs.
We're guilty of doing it, you know, now sometimes, aren't we?
When you're close to it, it's just the way it is, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it does take some balls. I mean, good or bad, fortunate or not, we've turned away 2 clients in our time so far, in our 2 and a bit years. And that was more, not because the money wasn't right, although it was a bit not the best, but it was more around, couldn't see ourselves working with those individuals. And it got to, you know, proposal round 1, 2 and sign off, and it was all good. But immediately when the team was starting to engage, project planning, account management, all that kind of stuff, organising everything, it just didn't start to work. And we were getting loads of feedback in terms of, this isn't working, we're not getting anywhere here, the feedback session is X or whatever. So rather than subject our tiny team at the time to that, we just said, all right, we're gonna pull it away. Like we'll just write the whole thing off and pull it away. And actually quite empowering. At the time I was thinking, shit, that's a few £1,000 I just, you know, said no to, even though we've started working on it. But it was getting in the way of other stuff. And it was, you know, we had guys coming into the office to 7 emails, completely irrelevant to the project, and the individual client wasn't seeing the end goal. It was just micromanagement, and it just didn't work.
Sometimes it is torture. It's hard walking away from stuff, though.
It really is.
But when you have that gut feeling, though, if you have a gut feeling that it's not going to work, even if it's a big project with big budgets, you just got to walk away from it. I think.
It's hard to follow your intuition, though, isn't it? When there's cash on the line, the bigger it is. You should. But how many times did you say you really truly followed your intuition on that one?
He's right, mate. There's a few instances.
Weirdly, as well, some of these instances occur most with a lot of the smaller clients with the least budget.
100%.
They come along and knocking on the door and say, "Look, we've only got like £50,000 to £60,000 to spend on XYZ." It all seems to go like fluidly, and they've got like lots of resource on their team, and they've got account managers helping our account managers, and the relationship is great, and everyone's having fun, works perfectly. And you have someone else come along and say, "Oh, well, we only have like $2,500 for this really small project. Is it something you can work with?" We look at the scope and say, "Yep, okay, we can probably do that." And there may be like a 1 or a 2-person band, and it just comes with torture
every time.
Exactly
the same for us. Exactly
it's not just us then.
Exactly the same, and it's almost like if I kind of know them a little bit, and I'm like, oh, let's just do them a favour.
Oh, no friends.
That's no friends.
No friends.
Oh, brutal. We're not helping anyone.
No, we do some stuff for friends, but it's nice to sort of separate sort of business and family and friends and things like that, because
it's hard. It's hard. I know so many people.
Everyone's my friend.
All of my friends. All 7 billion people.
Would you tell us what your favourite shoot ever was?
Yeah, I want to know this.
Do you feel confident?
For some reason I looked straight at the camera then when I looked. I was like, what do they want to know?
Straight down the camera.
I've got a few little instances. I remember Hillary Clinton being the most, not career changing, but it had a big impact. So It was also one of the most stressful. So we were live streaming Hillary Clinton for the Cheltenham Festival.
Wow.
And we were doing it for them, but also the Times. We'd been interviewed and monitored and by various secret service, what do we call them?
People.
Humans.
Yeah.
And we knew that obviously things were being monitored. And people were like, oh, are you going to get to meet Hillary Clinton? I'm like, yeah, I'm shooting her this weekend and stuff. I'm like, why am I saying I'm shooting Hillary Clinton? It's going to get me in some big trouble, that one. But we were all set to go. And I think we were like an hour and a half early because we knew that we needed time to set up. And then we found out that she was running late. We waited 3 hours for Hillary Clinton, and she was going on to do this event, and it was impacting on other stuff because I think she was coming out of London. And it was like, this is a problem. This is going way too over now. And I was backstage, so I had a little portrait studio set up, and on the other side of the room, they had, the standard sponsor boards, and there was like a line of dignitaries for her to meet. And they said, oh, can you just do your portrait over there with I was like, no, it's going to look awful. Yeah. I've got a light set up, but I haven't got the lights set up.
Yeah.
And I just said, look, I promise you I will do it in less than a minute. I don't even need 1 minute. I just need 1 minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, Hillary comes in, and she was amazing. She was just full of character, and she had banter, and she was just chatting, and she made everybody feel welcome and a part of it. And she did everything that we needed her to do. And then she had to do a couple more things, and she was like moving the banners around and stuff. And I was like, this one was great. Yeah, her banter was fantastic. And we actually recorded, because we had film cameras there and stuff, and we recorded everything that was going on. I sent it to the client afterwards, and it was just hilarious. And you saw a really lovely side of Hillary Clinton. And this was just after she'd lost to Trump as well, so she was kind of on her tour, talking about all that happened. And her right-hand lady, aide, whatever she was, looked at me and said, okay, you can do your shot now. And I was like, okay, cool. So she comes in, I literally do 1, 2, 3 shots, I check it, I say we're good, she gives me a little hand clap.
Brilliant.
And then she goes on stage. Now, I'm buzzing at this point. I've met Hillary Clinton. I know I've got a portrait. I got what I wanted. All right, a few hours later. And I'm always that really lucky photographer that gets free rein to do whatever I want. And all the other photographers come in, and they're in this tiny little press den, and they're all packed in one angle, and they've got a minute or maybe 2 minutes to get their shot, and then they all get sent. So all the major newspapers are there, a pile of them. I walk in backstage, and I kind of walk past them, and I'm letting them do their thing because I know that I'm going to be in that room for the next hour. I was lunging, getting my shot in different places, and I'm not going to worry about my shot now. Anyway, I walk past them. And one of the guys looked at me. He's an old school, has been around for years, very famous. He got a really famous photograph of Princess Diana coming down a motorway from a bridge with the top down. Yeah. And I think that was a big thing for him. Anyway, he's very well known. I like him a lot. But he looked at me and he said, "Did you get your portrait?" And I went, "Yeah." He said, "I hope it was sharp," and carried on photographing. And I was like, was it sharp? Shit. Was it sharp? Was it sharp?
In my head.
So now I go running around to see Nathan, who's backstage, organising the files to send them off. And he's like, yeah, it's cool. I was like, oh, phew. And then I went back in, and then I got different shots of her from different angles. And the next day, they used my photograph for the front cover of the Times instead of anybody else's. Yeah, and then my phone just exploded because there was my shot and my name. And that was a big thing. Yeah. And when do you get those sorts of opportunities? Not all that often. So yeah, that was cool.
That's awesome. Cool. That's a really awesome story.
And I've got a handful of those. Like I shot Damian Lewis, Sophie Turner, who was Sansa Stark in Game of Thrones, and Judi Dench, all in the space of about 20 minutes once. And I've got great portraits of them.
Wow.
And I was buzzing after that. And Judi Dench was an interesting one because I was so looking forward to shooting her. And I remember she came forward. I said hello. We had a little chat, and everything was fine. And then the second I put the camera on her, she changed. She suddenly became quite timid, and she seemed to lose her confidence.
Really?
And I shot them, and I was like, oh, that didn't go like how it normally goes. And I spoke to her afterwards. I said, you okay? And she said, yeah, it's really a weird time because I'm kind of losing my eyesight a little bit, and I'm really struggling to focus on things. So when you're stood in front of me, I actually can't focus on the camera properly. And I was like, damn. And I think the biggest thing that I've noticed over the years is that I can read people instantly, and I can walk into a room and know whether someone wants their photograph taken or not. Because like I shot Russell Brand, and I was with him for minutes, and I had to build rapport with him really quickly. And you're asking somebody who's either very famous, very well known, or has a certain element of ego, and they don't want to do what you want them to do half the time. So you've got to be able to build a very fast relationship with somebody and then persuade them to do stuff. I shot Richard Iowati. He was like, no, this is my range. And he wouldn't give me nothing else. He was like, this is the shot you're getting, pal. And he was quite funny.
What was it like building a rapport with Russell Brand? How did that go?
Just carnage. It was carnage. He was fine, actually. He was actually fine.
I feel like that'd be stressful.
It's his people around him that were stressful, I found. I think that quite often you find that when you've got somebody who can be a little bit of a character and they're turning up to do certain things and a lot is being asked of them, there's always the risk of them saying no. So the people that work with them, I think, are always on tenterhooks as to what they can and can't ask. So I will talk to anybody. I don't care whether it's a FTSE 100 chief exec or whatever. I just need them to do it. So I kind of just get in there and get on with it. Normally I see the people around them are less comfortable sometimes asking them to do stuff. Now, it depends on the relationship. It's all very different. But I've noticed a lot of the times, like with Vivienne Westwood, she was amazing, but the people around her were a little bit less supportive of us trying to do what we needed to do. And it's always a bit of a challenge. Even as I'm saying this now, I'm thinking, who might watch this that might know me, that might go, I'm that person. You're never shooting Vivienne Westwood again. It's interesting.
How do you manage that? And how do you, obviously you said with Russell Brand, you had literally minutes, a handful of minutes to get the shots and build that rapport and get it done and get the end result that you wanted. How would you quickly establish that? Is that just being ballsy and grabbing it and just being like, right, come on, let's go? You've
got to be confident. You've got to go straight in there. And what you've got to remember is a lot of these people don't always know why they're at these places. It depends how well briefed they've been. So they're used to having people telling them what to do, directing them, leading them. This is happening, that's happening. I've just come back from Dublin and we're shooting Liev Schreiber, who was Ray Donovan in the TV show, and Sabretooth in Wolverine. And as soon as I was telling him what to do, he's fine. He was just getting on with it and doing it. If you show any weakness or any sign that you don't know what's going on, that's when you're more likely to find that things don't always go your way.
Is he really tall? He looks giant.
He's a little bit shorter than me. No, he's big. He is a big guy.
I watched Ray Donovan. That was really good.
He was really lovely as well. Quite intimidating waiting for him. And we were working with him on a new whiskey brand called Slanche that he's involved with. And the first night, he's there drinking it. And he just hands it to me saying, have you tried it? So I'm drinking out of Ray Donovan's glass, So this is random. But it's a random world. You just don't know what you're going to get from one day to the next. I spent a whole day with Graham Norton shooting him in different ways, and he was just lovely. And
I saw his portrait behind. That's really good,
There is one individual that I'm really interested to know about.
Ashley's biggest fan.
But also he is the biggest picture there. But it's David Attenborough. How was that?
He was great.
I bet.
He's just got a twinkle in his eye, that guy. He's just lovely and charming and friendly and nonplussed. He just goes with the flow. And his was another one where I only got to do his portrait because his agent saw my portrait of Hillary Clinton. So, again, he was at an event. I was set up with my studio. There must have been 50 photographers outside. And his agent said, look, he's going to do one photo. I said, well, can I do it here in my portrait studio? And she's like, okay, so you want all the other photographers to come in and shoot him here as well, do you? And I was like, no. And then she kind of looked at me and she said, did you shoot that portrait of Hillary Clinton, which just happened to be where they were sat? And I went, yeah. She said, okay, that's fine. He'll come and do your photo and then he'll go outside.
Brilliant.
And I was like,
so we come here?
Oh, no, we were set up on the site. So he did it with, it's like, 3 meters to my place and then 2 meters outside, and he's outside with all the other photographers that are all crammed in trying to get him. And I looked at the shots after because they were in the paper, and I was like, oh, they're just rubbish. He's literally just stood there looking through a range of people. No one's going to be happy with that, but you get a shot. Whereas that portrait I've got of him there is just epic and majestic.
A bit like the Hillary Clinton story with front page of the Times. Has that been used anywhere?
No. Most of these have not been seen by anybody yet. So I want to do something with them, and I want to do something good and big with them, and I want to do it in collaboration with Cheltenham Festivals, which is where we've shot the majority of these. So I don't know whether we end up doing a book or something. But I must have shot 500-600 people.
A coffee book with obviously the finished photo, the story behind it, just like that Hillary Clinton story, for example. and the whole build up to it, the Secret
Yeah.
Service, the
Yeah.
watching stuff. I actually would like to know more about
Yeah.
that. Like,
That'd
how
be
did you
really
know
good,
you're
yeah.
being watched by the Secret Service?
They told us.
They told you. Not very bloody secret.
They moved into my house for the week. But yeah, no, we've got random stories for all these.
Yeah,
That would be really good, yeah. I always love, he started this years ago, but I forgot his name now. Humans of New York. Have you had that book?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Really, really good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
it's really good. But just hearing the background story, behind how you got in front of these people and what it was like, and I'm sure there's always something that goes terribly wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a great idea for a book, a bit closer to home. I was going to do The Dogs of Clifton. Which is like,
That would go down so well.
It would, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
Be good at Christmas.
You'd probably get more interested.
Yeah,
in
it probably would. Yeah.
People love their
It's
dogs.
not very good at photography, though.
Did you want to tell your story on how you met David Attenborough?
Okay. Yeah, I can if you want to. So I used to work for BBC Wildlife magazine and BBC as a whole, and I got invited every year to Wildlife Photographer of the Year, and this one was the 50th anniversary, so it was in the Natural History Museum, and it was all beautifully lit. With they turned all the lights off. It was all candle lit all through the museum. It was stunning, and they had dinner underneath what was it used to be called, the dinosaur? Is it Dippy or Diplo?
Yeah.
Diplo's a DJ, I think, but Diplo just hanging from the Natural History Museum, different vibe. But we were in there, and I was sat on the table, and there was Bid Oddly, who was a bird guy, and Blackadder and all that kind of stuff. And we had a few beers, and I was like, God, I'd really love to meet David Attenborough, because he's probably from like here to the end of that corridor. And he was like, oh, Dave? I was like, yeah, Sir David. He's like, yeah, come on then, I'll come introduce you. Like, grabbed my arm, pulled me through the crowd, walked up to Sir David Attenborough's table. He went, Dave, I want to introduce you to my new friend. This is Ashley. And I was like, whoa, hello, hi. And I just remember speaking to him really, really briefly. I said, I'm a massive fan. And like my voice was quivering, and I was going, oh, you remember the first video I ever bought? I collected the tokens on the Weetabix box. He was like, oh, thank you so much. And I was just like, God, that was for me, really memorable. And he did this amazing speech with this whole cinematic thing behind him, and it was stunning. And it was like watching Sir David on TV, but I was there and hearing his voice for real. It sounds exactly the same as you would imagine.
It's a little bit of Stardust, isn't it?
It's incredible. Yeah.
It's like some people just have this ability and this magnetism, and it's like, what?
Yeah. Do you ever get, well, obviously all the work you do and all the people that you meet, do you ever sort of get those moments where you're like, whoa, actually, this is incredible, I feel a bit... Ooh.
So I have no feeling of nervousness or they're a big star, oh my God, isn't this amazing? It's just, well, you're just a person, or you've done
you're my subject.
this, or you're fantastic, or you've done cool stuff. But it's very rare that I'm like nervous about meeting them, because I've done it.
Yeah.
You know, I've shot so many people in so many different places and so many different ways, and there's just no need to hype them up.
Yeah.
I might be excited about the opportunity to shoot whoever, just because it's cool. Like I shot Helena Bonham Carter.
Yeah.
I was like, this is cool. This is great. So there's that element of I am very appreciative and very grateful for the opportunity, because I know that there are people that would fall over themselves. I shot Kyle Walker at his house. I don't know anything about football. And I had people like, oh my God, I can't believe you, what? And I'm like,
He's cool.
he's I'm just a footballer.
Yeah, he's just a bloke.
He's just a normal guy, you know, you're right, he's done really well, he's famous and he's on TV, but I'm going around his house to shoot him for a particular reason. He's just, you know. So, that got knocked out of me pretty early. And like I say, I'm grateful and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I'm not drawn into the hype of it. And I think if I did, I wouldn't be very good at my job, because I'd be too nervous to do my thing, or I wouldn't be clear in my instructions, because I need to get something out of somebody very quickly that in many, many cases doesn't really want to be doing it or doesn't have time for it. And how many times has Sir David been shot, you know? Does he really want to be stood in front of me again for someone he's never going to see again? Yeah. It's a bigger deal for me than it is for him.
Yeah, of course.
So, if I was all fanboy over him, I don't think it would go all that well.
So don't put me in front of him, because that's exactly what happened. So.
You'd have been sat on his lap asking for a selfie.
Yeah, literally. We could literally spend all day listening to your stories and all about the business. What I'd like to kind of unpick is just a bit about your kind of creative process. And again, some of the brands you work with are absolutely incredible, and some of the work you've done absolutely incredible. I'd like to kind of understand what that creative process looks like kind of storyboarding? How would you start that process, and what's the approach?
So at this stage, the least important person in any of the conversations is me.
Right.
It's all the team.
Right.
Like Dale comes up with creative ideas and is fantastic at pitching in concepts to clients, and he will pitch in ideas and thoughts that he's had that I wouldn't have even have considered. And I'm like, this is a total wild card. You're going to put this in front of the client, and the client loves it. So I've learned to trust in the process of the people I've got around me are the people to rely on. So I'm great at getting people excited and building the hype and wanting to do stuff. But then actually when it comes to the creative, I try and step away a little bit because I know that the team are better off handling it and delivering it. And what we try and do is understand the brand. What do they want to do? Where are they going? Who are they looking to engage with? And why are they trying to do that? Because quite often people will just come to you and say, oh, we need a video.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? What? And then like, how much is it going to cost for a video? I'm like, well, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
So we spend a lot of time at the front end understanding what we're doing and why we're doing it and why they want it.
Yeah.
Other times people will come to us and say, we've got a new product or a new service, we want to do this, we want to do that. And then it's a range of options then. It's everything from, well, this is functional and this is quite straightforward. It will deliver an element of what you need, but maybe this would also help, and then this thing, and then there's a crazy concept over here that will get masses of attention, might be quite expensive. So we normally find that you end up in a position where clients want a blend of content across photography and film. So any client will probably want more than one film, and quite rightly so. So as soon as you start cutting it down to have it for LinkedIn and website and Insta stories or whatever, you need to give them that range. But what we try and do is say, well, what do you want and why? Yeah. And then it goes through a whole process here. We've got a creative team that will just look at ideas. So if you guys came to us and said, we've got this thing that we want to do, then we'll spend a lot of time looking at references so that you've got stuff to look at, because it's great. We're all quite visual. So if we're describing stuff, we can normally get it. A lot of the people we're talking to just won't get it. Yeah. And they're not going to sign off on something because you normally find that they're not the actual person making the decision, so you've got to sell to them and they've got to sell to somebody else. And that's quite a hard thing. So like if Dale's selling something, oh my god, everybody gets it. If he sold it to me and then I've got to sell it to somebody and I'm not quite convinced by it, I'm never going to do as good enough good a job as he will.
100%. And then you mentioned obviously in terms of all the platforms, with everything that's going on in the world of social and the emergence of metaverses and all that kind of stuff, is that changing how you approach creative at the moment?
Yes and no. I think the main thing is people say, oh, we just need Insta Reels, so we don't need to spend too much money on it. And I fall into two categories of, okay, there are certain things that we can do that maybe are a little bit cheaper because maybe their lifespan is not as long, but we can spend as much time producing Insta content as we can a TV ad. But there's just an expectation that a TV ad will be 5 times, 10 times the price. Whereas if you think it's just going on social, then it doesn't matter. So again, it's the, what is your brand about? What is your standard? How do you want to be seen? How do you want to be seen by the world? Because we can go out and produce some stuff. But if you're competing with somebody that's spending a fortune or making it look really lovely or really considered what it looks like, well, they're just going to look a lot better than you. So where do you sit and why do you sit there? Let's work with you to try and find the right balance, because it's not like we just want to come and say this is going to cost you a load of money, let's go and do it. No, I won't let clients spend too much money on stuff if I don't feel they need to. So it's just, again, where are you, what do you want to do, how long are you going to use this for? Let's work with you to find the right way of handling it. I remember in the early days of my career, if you like, when I started, a friend of mine in the corporate world had a really close friend who was a dance photographer. And she said, oh, you should reach out. She's happy to have a conversation if you might be able to help you. I was like, great. So I spoke to her and I looked at her website and I was filled with two very strong polarizing feelings. One of, oh my God, this work is amazing. And secondly, I'm never going to achieve this. I'm never going to be this good. I'm never going to do what she's done. And also she had lots of famous faces. I was like, I'm never going to photograph Theo Petitis from Dragon's Den. I'm never going to do that. But she had so many famous faces. And it was hard because I was like, I've got no skill here. I've got no training. I'm 28, which is what I was when I started. And I'd only ever trained to become a financial monkey really, because I wasn't doing anything crazy. I was just doing what I was told to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm never going to make it. Now, when I look back, I'm like, okay, I've done a lot and I've done more, and it's incredible what I've done. So at that point in my career, I could easily have been put off as much as I was inspired by that website. So for anyone that's doing stuff, I would just say, make small steps, keep going, and, you know, grab it by the horns, because if you don't start, you'll never get anywhere.
Yeah.
And Jamie Cullen was the first famous face that we had on the website. And then you get, I think I might Charlie Dimmock or something, you know, and in those early days, you've got these people, you're thinking, well, that's great, you know, it's a D-lister or whoever. And then it kind of builds up. And then now we're looking back and going, well, are we going to put Helena Bonham Carter next to this person or that person or whatever? And, you know, when I present the deck to somebody, I'm like, what do I have to take out to try and make this as relevant as possible? So, yeah, I think that early review of that person's website could easily have put me off so much that I didn't go ahead, because I just didn't think I'd ever achieve it. Random, hey?
I like that. That's nice. But we're getting towards the end of this podcast now. What I'd be really interested to sort of know as a kind of final recap, I suppose, or sort of a bookend to this conversation is, what's next for Still Moving? Where are you guys going, or where do you want to go? Vogue Italia, I think, is... that will always and forever be on the list.
Yeah. But we want to be known for doing cool creative projects.
Yeah.
So again, it doesn't matter whether it's a small startup or a global brand, as long as people are pushing to make it look great and ideally get attention. Because we know that we're ultimately in the space where we're selling brands and we're selling products and services, ultimately. So we want whatever we do to be successful. So yeah, it's geography-wise, we'd want to move out a little bit. We're looking at what we can do in London, and we're looking at what we could do in New York, and we've got relationships and clients dotted around in different places. So we're probably start with London and then look at New York. But I am going to New York in November on a bit of an expedition to kind of see where the opportunities are.
That's exciting. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, but I don't want the excitement and the allure of it to get in the way. Everything has to be very well considered, and also if I start doing that, I'm a distraction then to everybody else, but also I'm not distracted on what else needs to be done here. So London would be a much more sensible way of starting. But equally, there's a part of me that thinks you do only live once.
Just go for it.
Just because that might be the logical way of proceeding. You don't know what's going to happen.
It sounds like you already do quite a bit of travel as well. Does that sort of get in the way? Is that?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
I really do. And I think lockdown kind of proved to me that I have this hunger for moving around, and I don't like to be linked to one place for too long. So, yeah, I'm in Switzerland next week. I've just come back from Spain, and we were in Dublin before that. But before lockdown, I think Dale had been in Barcelona, Iceland, and Dublin, and just come back from El Salvador and Honduras. So with our job, we can be anywhere at any point in time. So yeah, going back to question, we just want to keep doing cool creative stuff. We want to grow. We want to become known for doing certain things. And the automotive is big for us. You know, we've invested pretty hard into the automotive space, and we've done some cool stuff. So now we just need to ramp it up and do some more of it.
No, great stuff. So in terms of those who are listening, Spencer, where can people connect with you if they want to?
So on LinkedIn is a good place for me, as Spencer McPherson, but the exciting stuff happens on the Instagram of Still Moving Media.
Great stuff.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate the chance just to sit here and chat nonsense. So thanks.